Okay, and we are live with the season finale, or series finale rather, of the Grim Litany of Librarians. Hello, everybody, and joining me today is Peter from the Grim and Perilous Studios and Parts Per Million Gaming. Peter, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, I've been writing for Zweihander in the library for, I think 2018 was my first release in the library, and I've got my own games company, which is Parts Per Million, which is mainly a specialist in solo role playing tools. But yeah, I think I've got 38 titles in the library now.
Is it 38? Wow, I would believe it. I think you and Adrian have the most, I think.
Yes, we do.
All right. So, today we're talking about conclusions, which is appropriate for a series finale. So, when it comes to writing conclusions specifically, so for you, Peter, like, what are some things that you like to do whenever you're trying to figure out how to come up with a good ending or a good conclusion to the story?
Um, I want to get three things into a conclusion. The first thing would be from the character's point of view, the if you like the big fight, the boss fight come the end. There's something big, so they feel that they have achieved something from that point of view. But actually, as mentioned from the players, I suppose, from the players' point of view, everything's built up to, and they've something a clear defining moment where they have won or lost, and hopefully they've won. So that was the big thing. Um, Immediately after that is some kind of resolution where so if they if Bloodport's shipping warehouse districts in flames, lighting up the night sky. That's the end of the big the big battle they went through. There then has to be some kind of resolution. So they then you know what was the repercussions of what they did, and then the very last thing that I'd like to get into a conclusion is to loop back to the beginning, because during their adventure, something must have changed. They started off with the problems with the blood snaps at the beginning. They've done all this stuff in the story arc, and there should be a lasting change in Bloodport because of their actions. And so I like to either maybe that final bit hasn't started to play out yet, but it should at least be hinted at that is what they changed, the lasting effect. So it's kind of a case of the big finish and then a resolution phase at the very end. So that's what I try and get into a conclusion.
Right. So with your let's see. So with, for example, using our example of this right we've been writing, you suggest you're talking like something explodes, or like basically they're going out with a big bang.
Well, yeah, some kind of end of level boss sort of thing. It could be, because we've got the two bad guys, haven't we? We've got the
Yes.
mayor, and we've got the I've forgotten the name, but the stevedores union, or the shipping
It's the shipping
guild.
guild.
So we've got these two bad guys, and we don't know who the players are, or the characters are going to side with, if anyone. So we've got a bit of a Schrodinger's conclusion going on, because we don't know which side they are going to decide with, and it could be they side with the mayor, in which case the shipping union, who have the warehouses and the docks, that could, bringing those down could be the conclusion. or it could be that bringing the mayor down is the conclusion, and that could be less blunderbuss at dawn. It could be more of a sort of political, sort of a public bringing down. It could be on the gallows and a short rope. But there's going to be something, but we don't know which. So yeah, it doesn't have to be warehouses burning on the skyline, but
Mm-hmm.
it's rare that my players ever leave a town without a plume of smoke somewhere.
Right. So basically, it needs to be dramatic, but not like, but it doesn't need to be like earth-shakingly dramatic. So is that the kind of vibe I'm understanding here?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I like the whole kind of dramatic ending. It's for the players. It's very obvious when they have achieved something. If it is big and is obvious, and my players aren't good at subtle.
Mm-hmm. Your players aren't subtle, or your players don't like to be subtle. Um,
I think it's a case of our gaming time is fairly precious, so so we end up painting in broad strokes, if you like, rather than and also big things stick in the memory better than the subtle things.
Right.
So from when we do get to play, it's easier to remember, the big events than the subtle events.
Right. So that's the thing to keep in mind when you're writing your adventures, is that a good big ending is better than a weak kind of small one, right?
Yeah. I don't like the big concluding conflicts to be mistaken for another encounter along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I like to differentiate them.
And so, what are some ways that you like to differentiate them? Like, do you like do things with the like different environment type things, or what?
Definitely, yes. I like to stage them so it is obvious that you that you have reached a conclusion. It plays out on a bigger stage. It's not just another room in a mansion. It'll be in the ballroom, or at the top of the staircase. It's I like to put a heavy dose of sort of theatrical in it, or even sort of the Hollywood, yeah, sort of more kind of movie than novel in that respect.
Right. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So is it so whenever you're writing these conclusions, is it always a big fight, or do you write these conclusions as, or can you write these conclusions as social intrigues?
Oh yeah, definitely. It doesn't have to be a big fight at the end. It all depends on what's going on. I wrote one recently where it was a kind of abduction type scenario. Sorry, and the the conclusion was actually returning the lost child to the family.
Mm-hmm.
And but it was a clear and obvious that was the end. You have achieved what you were trying to achieve. So there was no combat involved in that at all. It was an investigation and a deduction, and at the end of it, there was hopefully a happy ending. But it was far more social and not more skills based
Mm-hmm.
rather than all guns blazing and blowing up the scenery. Uh, but yeah, definitely. And our mayor in Bloodport, I could imagine that being far more of a social solution. Um, because if you walk in and start shooting up the mayor's office, you're generally going to get into trouble.
Right.
Um, but then, if you can motivate the mob to go in, storm, and drag him out, then you're using your social side there to motivate the stevedores or whichever social groups that the players have interacted with. So yeah, it can be social, but it should still feel like you're bringing down um, the bad guy. It should feel like a conclusion.
Mm-hmm. And like, I mean, you could actually also probably apply that to the shipping guild leader as well. Like it could be a court. You could turn it
Yeah.
into a courtroom drama, and pivot to that.
Yes. Yes.
You know, like maybe they've
Yeah.
gotten the evidence to arrest him.
Yeah. This is one of the curious things about writing adventures not for your own group is if every game master will get an adventure and they will make it their own.
Mm-hmm.
So, my group likes to blow stuff up, but another group could be all about the investigative side, the social side, manipulating people, groups, courtroom dramas, if that's what they really enjoy. So we have to be prepared for writing a conclusion that way. That's the way I build things. When we're talking about NPCs, I was saying that what I like to do is to know who they are, what they want, and how they're going to try and achieve it. Well, with the forces or factions within an adventure, if I know what they want and what they're going to try and do to achieve it, you then know what the characters have got to somehow do to prevent it, because
Right.
you know what the events are going to be. And often these things can just roll and they will find their own conclusion rather than writing a specific scene or multiple scenes. If you just know the trajectories that all these things are on and the game master knows what they are, you can almost set the date for the conclusion rather than the scene for the conclusion. And just let the game master create the conclusion out of, you've given them all the blocks to do it, and then they can just put it together how they like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not big on this kind of act one, act two, act three format. It can feel slightly railroady. And then if it all comes down to one conclusion, then you've kind of got this illusion of choice in between. You've got a fixed plot hook and you've got a fixed conclusion, and everything in between is an illusion of choice
Right.
because they've got to get to that end bit. Whereas if you've just set up your factions with their plans and their schemes and how they're going to try and achieve things, and every faction, the mayor's got that, the stevedores union's got what they want to achieve, and the shipping guild have got what they want to achieve, and all these things are going to collide at some point. And it could almost be a case of if the players did nothing, all these things would collide much sooner, because the sooner they start to weaken one side, they kind of knocking people off course.
Mm-hmm.
So the game master is then free he knows the consequences of everything, or they know the consequences of everything, and they know their players' actions. They can actually decide what the big conclusion would be, and the ramifications of that for their game.
Right.
which is a different way of looking at it. It's a bit more improv is required with that.
Yeah. The way you're talking about how the different factions and how they all have their own plans and the players interacting with them, it kind of calls to mind the Fallout video game series. Um, in those games, basically at the end of every story, or not story, but at the end of every game, they do a little. They have all the forces that have been building up throughout the game. They all have their final climatic meetup, and usually it's a fight because it's a video game. Um, and like depending on which side the players have joined, it will change what the outcome of that fight's going to be. The most famous example I know of this is from the Fallout New Vegas game, where you can join Caesar's Legion or the New California Republic, or join neither of them and take over the Strip yourself, the Las Vegas Strip, and become your own force there. And it collides at the end of the game with everything else, and then it plays a slideshow of the consequences of your choices. So that makes so that I'm trying to think of how to tie that back in, because my brain lost the train of thought there. But basically, I think I see what you're trying to say.
Yeah, everything would have consequences. Yeah, so if you've got this, if no one interferes, this is what this faction will try to achieve at different points to this end, and this is what their goal. And so you've got the shipping union with their goal, the mayor with his goal, and they are going to come into conflict. And then you've kind of got the stevedores union, who are basically the innocents in between, who are going to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
And the players are going to have an impact somewhere on this. And but the game master can modify these plans and these actions and the consequences depending on the player's actions, and see where the conclusions will lie. Rather than turning the page, it says, Act 5, the final showdown, when it may be that the mayor died in scene 1, and yet he's meant to be the big conclusion. You've then got a game master that's trying to patch things up somehow.
Right.
The newly elected mayor now becomes the bad guy. So, yeah, I quite like the, here's the continuum, here's the threads of everything that's going on, and here is what would happen if nothing changes. And then let the game master play it out, because each game master and group of players would naturally lean between one way or the other. So yeah, that's the way I would like to work it.
Okay.
And then the consequences afterwards, which could take another whole session to play out if if there's big social repercussions because of what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
That is going to have impacts on NPCs' lives.
Right, of course.
By the thousands.
Because with using Bloodport as an example, Bloodport, I believe, is a big shipping town. So, and like the problem with the blood schnapps is that it's affecting the community as a whole. So removing it, or one side gaining control of the blood schnapps, would drastically change the entire city.
Yes, and we was a situation where the characters could take out one of the bad guys and yet to make the situation worse. Because with the competition taken out, the other bad guy can accelerate their production or accelerate their plans. You could end up with a kind of a double conclusion where you take out the shipping union. Things get worse because the mayor now has the field is free. And then they have to deal with that as well. Mm-hmm. And how are they going to deal with that? You can put a false conclusion in there where they may take out the mayor's centres of production, but they haven't taken out the mayor. So the threat, they've treated the symptom but not the cause.
Right.
But that's the sort of thing which it would be really, really hard to write in a set number of scenes. Here's the game stats for what we're going to encounter when you don't actually know what the encounters are going to be. It's conclusions can be very, very hard. You can tie yourself in knots trying to cope with every single possible conclusion.
Right. So, in your mind, then, is it better to then just? So it sounds like what you're saying is that you want to sort of like just you tell the game master who might be running the adventure, this is the plans of these 3 groups that are involved, and this is how they change, or this is how they could potentially be changed if one group is taken out, or what?
Yes, pretty much. It's almost like converging timelines.
Mm-hmm.
And you can detail some locations. So, the game master is equipped with, they know what the town hall looks like and what's going on. So if they're going to confront the mayor, the game master is equipped to deal with a confrontation with the mayor. They know what's the top. It's in Atslan, isn't it? It's at the shipping union, shipping guild. You equipped the game master with the tools they need to run the conclusion that their players are taking it towards, without actually writing it in black and white exactly what the expected conclusion is going to be. Because the minute you write that, you're cutting off the options for the group that came up with a more interesting solution for them.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely can see and agree with that being a good way to rate conclusions. Because again, it ties back to you don't know, because I think we said this before. We don't know what the group's going to be like that's going to be playing this game, and so it becomes a challenge to write a conclusion that would be satisfactory for a group of strangers who are 2 degrees of stranger away from you.
Yeah, definitely. You talk about a computer game. That is all coded, and you got the illusion of freedom, mm-hmm. but you can only take the actions that are coded in there. So when you want to show concluding scene and cut scenes, you kind of know where the players are and what choices they made, so you can do it. With a pen and paper role-playing game, the players, you can have any combination of, we don't know who the characters are, how many characters there are, or what their intentions are. We've all now, we're talking about, these are the sort of how we would plan this conclusion. But we hadn't taken into account that the players could actually join one of what we see as the bad guys,
mm-hmm.
and accelerate their plans, and not try and bring them down at all,
Right.
which is entirely possible. They might. I had this happen in a game years and years ago where I thought I'd come up with this really subtle bad guy with a really subtle plan, and then put the players were meant to discover it, find hints about it and discover it, and then want to bring it down. Well, they discovered the hints about it and thought it was a wonderful idea, and they wanted to join forces with it, which was not the planned adventure at all.
Right.
It wasn't even the planned adventure. That was the campaign, because they were meant to be bringing down this kind of this sort of evil political movement, kind of like the Third Reich, meant to, which was trying to sway people's opinion, and they basically joined the bad guys, and that was not what I wanted at all, not what I expected, which meant I then had to either make the bad guy even worse and less subtle, or rewrite him and say, okay, yeah, he's unorthodox, but he's not a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
There's another bad guy, and so yeah, I was faced with this choice, but you couldn't write that. That would be a really, really terrible adventure to publish. Kind of, oh well, here's a bad guy, but here's a worse one if we really get it wrong. So yeah, we really know nothing, and we don't know, how many players, what they are, what their attitudes are, the characters they create. We don't know what they are. We don't even know the game master and how the game master is going to present things, because if the game master presents some of our Stevedore Union's NPCs as not very pleasant, then rather than joining them, the players might, or the characters might end up avoiding them. So we really know nothing. We don't know where they're starting from, and we don't know where they're going to end, and we don't know that much about the middle either.
Right.
So yeah, and then we have to bring it all together in an exciting finish. Easy.
It's so easy. Like, when you mentioned that the players could potentially join an antagonistic force, that brought to mind, again, the Fallout game. Specifically, the Caesar's Legion is the antagonistic force of that game. And so the way that they handle that is that they just simply, they have you play as a member of the Caesar's Legion, and the antagonists then become the NCR, they become the NCR basically, because those are the two main forces outside of the Vegas Strip. So that's a potential way of doing it. Is they want to play the evil people, then they become the evil people.
Yes, but then you've got the problem of if they join the evil people, but they think they're the good people.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. See, I see what you're saying now. Yeah. Because there is a conscious decision made. Your very first encounter with Caesar's Legion is really they raised a town that you're going to. That's your first encounter with them.
Yeah, it's hard to mistake that as being in any way good. But yeah, the conclusion is hard, because if you can really write it as a concrete thing, then there's the danger of railroading. If you leave it too vague, it can feel dissatisfying. And you need to thread a path between the two. And the only way I could rationalize how I could do that was to equip the game master with everything they would need to play out every possible conclusion, or enough possible conclusions that they don't feel completely left at sea. But you've given them everything and the reasoning why. If the game master knows why and how, then they can set up the actual details. So yeah, that's the way I would like to work.
Right.
My more recent adventures, that's the way they tend to work.
Right. So basically, what you're doing is you're giving the game masters the tools to run the adventures, and then saying, "Go wild."
Yes.
Like tailor it to your table. Okay. Yeah. No. I mean that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I've written some adventure and I've released it for different systems, and the Zweihander version might be 2,000 words. The Dungeon World version might be 1,100 words, and that 900 word difference is the fact that Dungeon World is set up for, they have something called a front. Everything is a front, and that front is a ladder of actions that this person would take. And everything is not only people, it could be organizations, it could be a volcano. It's going to spew smoke, it's going to spew fumes, it's going to spew lava, it's going to shake the ground. There is a series of actions, and you don't really need to tell the game master any more than that, because it's a volcano and it's going to do what volcanoes do.
Right.
And you've told them the consequences. So everything has this little ladder of things they're going to do. And a thief may be happy just to steal your wallet, but if he's threatened, they might be prepared to kill. So you've got only a 2-step ladder there. So you've got that, but also you have something called grim portents, which are the key events in, say, in the plot, and which order they're going to happen in, and maybe what will trigger each one. So you don't need to provide the game master with the whole timeline, because they know what is going to happen. And if the players or their characters foil this plot at this point, then that was the point in the timeline, if you like. But It's all set up. Everything has a little timeline. So it's already in place. And because that scaffolding is in place, you don't have to then construct it. Zweihander doesn't have a built-in structure for writing adventures. And so you have to show the game master the structure and then use it. Something else that Dungeon World does is something called establishing questions, because the game is based around giving the players as much input as the game master almost.
Mm-hmm.
So you would start our adventure there with explaining what the blood schnapps is, as far as the character would know, but then asking the players, do you know someone that's addicted to blood schnapps, or do you know someone that works with? And so they can anchor their own characters in the game world.
Mm-hmm.
And you can ask them, why have they come to Bloodport? And you're asking all these questions, and it helps establish the game world from the character's perspective. And so you've already kind of got the characters anchored in there. We were saying just before, we don't know who the players are, we don't know who the characters are, we don't know what they're doing here. We've got all this stuff we don't know. Dungeon World addresses that by establishing questions to anchor the characters in the world. And if you ask the right questions, the players will give you the right answers, which will simply saying kind of, the blood schnapps is this highly addictive drink, that's a drug that's going around. does your character know anyone that's addicted to it? And they say, yes, my Aunt Bessie is addicted to it. And suddenly you've now got an NPC that's been manufactured out of nothing
Mm-hmm.
that you can now use to move the players where you want. So they've anchored themselves in the world, and they've created these levers that you can pull. And so that kind of gives them genuine freedom to decide what their answers to the questions are. But then you've got you've hooked them into or they've hooked themselves into the adventure.
Right.
And if everything is on its own little timeline, a timeline could be 30 seconds. If someone says your money or your life, and you say, draw your sword, so they do. And that could be a very, very short timeline. It took 5 seconds. But another one, the mayor's timeline could take 3 months. So, and as the mayor's timeline progresses, there would be visible effects. There could be a weakening of the shipping unions or shipping guilds' grip on the port, or so there are things that. So if your players are floundering, the game master can look at these timelines and create a new event, so to rekindle the fire by having an event sweep the players up and carry them along. And but all the time the players have got real choice, because these events will happen whether they're there or not. And because everyone is moving towards their own conclusion, the players will put their characters into one of these timelines, and it will go towards a conclusion. It's just a very different way of working. It's much more open.
Right.
Very little boxed text, and in room 2 3 kobolds.
So you mentioned the fronts system for Dungeon World.
Yes.
So if I remember correctly, there are 3 Grim Portents per front, right? Like you got your first Grim Portent, second one, and then your third one, and the third one's the conclusion one. So I know that in Zweihander, the adventure I'm releasing tomorrow, actually, I wrote it around the conspiracy, which is, again, it's the 3 things. So you've got your 3 clues to 3 leads to 3 revelations. Do you think that you could potentially adapt that to the front system with Dungeon World? Or would you think it would be better to adapt the front system the other way?
I don't think it matters which way around you do it. You know what you want to achieve. If you did it, if you can injected the fronts into Zweihander and then use the Zweihander mechanics for the conspiracies, it would probably feel more natural to a game master that's familiar with Zweihander, rather than making it feel like an imported some alien blob that you've dropped in. So I would go for the method of least resistance. Try and keep it. But yes, you could very, very easily adapt the game mechanics across that way. Because the fronts aren't really a mechanic as such. It's more of just a structure. So there's and you've got these 2 structures. You've got the 3x3x3 in the conspiracy, and you've got the fronts, which are basically essentially timelines. So yeah, it could easily be done, and I think you would end up with far more robust adventures if we gave the game masters the tools to make them reactive
Right.
make the adventures reactive rather than, I used to hate D&D modules, which would have, this room here is a little self-contained universe. It's got 3 goblins in it with no source of food that have been there for 400 years. You kick in the door, you kill the goblins, take their stuff, and move on. I don't like that. I almost never do that. I would quite happily give you a map and tell you it's all full of cobwebs and dust sheets and things, and it's not been used for 200 years. And then let the game master improvise. And if there's a grand piano in the living room, just say, yeah, there's a grand piano there. So, just purely for whatever effect you're after. But the individual rooms, I rarely describe individual rooms. The players can do it. The game master can do that. So you give them the feel for the place, and then let them make it their own.
Yeah, I can see that definitely working. Because again, this all ties back to what we've been saying since the beginning of this episode, which is basically, your game master is going to, or the game master who is running the adventure is going to change it to suit their needs at their table, right? So it's better to just provide them with, these are the things that exist in this room, and you can easily add things to it if you need to.
Yes. Yeah. You can say, do whatever you want, but this bit needs to happen, and give them a hard point. If the key to the safe is stuck to the back of a picture in above the mantelpiece, then tell them that fact, and everything else is up to them. And if they want to move the key, if the players search down the back of the sofa and they lift up plant pots and they're doing everything except look at the pictures, then move the key under a plant pot. It's it makes no difference.
Right.
But but still, you've told them there is a key. They need to know there's a key. They need to know it's hidden in the drawing room, and the safe is in the study. That's the important bit. What they do after that is happens at the table, and it's their game.
Right.
We plan things up until they start playing. From that point on, it's not our adventure; it's theirs.
Right.
And they'll play it their way. They play to find out what happens, so we don't have to write what happens.
Right.
Which makes writing the conclusion difficult. We can only, I think that you can only really write all the ingredients that will go into the conclusion, because they will reach their conclusion. They won't reach our conclusions.
Right. And that makes complete sense too, because as they are working on this adventure themselves, like you said, like they might search everywhere but the place where it was prescribed in the what you wrote. So if they don't ever think to look there, then they wouldn't find it otherwise.
You can always just write kind of, okay, the study. There is a key hidden somewhere in the study. It is very well hidden. Your player, if your players search for it, they will find it. Mm-hmm. And that opens up another can of worms as well, doesn't it? Because do you then make them roll to scrutinize to find the key, or that's not the right skill, but awareness to find the key, or do you wherever they look, that's where they find the key, or some other or if it's the old school way would be the keys where you want it. The key is where the GM says it is, and if the players don't find it, they don't find it.
Right.
There's no rolling skill tests. There's if you don't find the key, but you find the safe, then you've got to solve that problem your own way. Then the fail forward kind of method would be you roll for your search, and depending on how you roll, it takes you longer or not. On a really good roll, you find it instantly. On a really bad roll, you find it eventually, but maybe with some consequences elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Or if having your players getting frustrated and not enjoying the game isn't for you, you let them search somewhere, and the first thing they say that sounds really clever or a good place to hide a key, that's where you put the key. And then they think, wow, we had this good idea and it works, great. And then move on.
Yeah, so I know that... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go on.
I was going to say, I know that with Zweihander, when it comes to the conspiracies, for example, you don't have to roll to find, like, to see the clue. Like, the character will see the clue. But they might have to make a roll to understand what that clue means. So...
Yes.
That could be... That seems to be that in Zweihander itself, the favored method is the first method, which is you don't have to roll for it.
Yeah, the best game in the world for investigative things is Gumshoe. It was built from the ground up for investigations, and it takes the point of view of the fun starts after the characters have found the clue.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have skills are split into two groups. You have investigative skills, which are automatic success. It's more kind of binary. You either have the forensic skill or you don't. You have the interrogation skill or you don't. But if you have it, it automatically works and you get the clues if they're there to be found. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the general purpose skills. If you're shooting a gun, then you might hit, you might miss. That is on your roll. But that's built on this idea of you have to give the players the clues, otherwise they can't solve the mystery or the conspiracy or solve the puzzle.
Right.
So they must get the clue. So I always try and set things up so the players will get the clues. What they mean is, well, that's for the players to decide, or if they're really floundering, the skill roll.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a whole discussion itself, isn't it? Then.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Do you write the puzzles for the players, or do you write the puzzles for the characters? There's not a musical bone in my body. I know nothing about music. I don't own any, don't listen to it. But I could have a character that's a absolute maestro with a violin, and if there was any kind of musical clue, they would probably know it, and I would be completely flummoxed.
So my favorite method of handling that and that kind of stuff is to write for the characters. Like, I don't like leaving riddles that have to be solved by the players, because that has been frustrating. Is like, you have the riddle and it's a riddle, but you don't know how to solve the riddle.
Yes.
And especially if the riddle is important to moving towards the end of the adventure, which is what makes it so difficult sometimes, because you got that added pressure. But your player might know it, or not. Your character would know it, rather.
Yes. Yeah. If your character is he's got their whole background is in that field, it might be obvious to them. So yeah, you have to write to the characters, and I hate things being brought to a shuddering halt by a bad dice roll.
Mm-hmm.
So you rarely ever see me specify an actual skill test and in my adventures. I would rather tell the game master to um, set suitable ones, because you may find that I say, oh, it's scrutinized, it's an arduous scrutinized test, and it just turns out that none of the characters are very good at scrutinized, and you're thinking, well, they can't solve it, they can't progress. Whereas if the players have been playing to their skills, they can create challenges which challenge their best skills. So they've got a chance of succeeding.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I would rather draw in these broad strokes and give the game master the tools rather than actual puzzles and things to solve. Yeah, and they can be very, very simple. I've got one adventure where there's a basilisk that's stalking around a house looking for victims. The point of the adventure is the characters have to go in and rescue the people that are hiding from the basilisk. So it's a kind of rescue mission.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't specify where the basilisk is. I say where it starts out, but it's just going to wander. Well, actually, it just makes awareness tests as it wanders around. Every time the characters do something that's loud, it makes an awareness test, so it might find them before they find it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's NPCs dotted around that are scared to death because there's a basilisk in the house,
right?
In the manor house, but I don't say how the players are going to get into the house. They could go in through the garden, they could go in through the front door, they could go, put a ladder against it and go in through the upstairs window. I don't care, and it doesn't matter. The conclusion of that, the first one, would be slaying the basilisk. But the resolution from that is you can make a medicine to revive the people that have been slain by the basilisk from the basilisk, from its blood, I think. So there's another conclusion when they can rescue the family, and then there'll be another sort of at the end of that. This family is part of a town, and it's a terrible monster to have threatening the town, and a nice family. So there's a kind of pat on the back reward at the end of it. So it depends on where you want to say what's the conclusion. Is it slaying the monster? Is it saving the family? Is it declaring the monster dead and getting the praise of the villagers or the town? If none of those three happens, it means the characters are all dead in the living room of the house or wherever they bought the basilisk. But it's I don't know where it will happen, when it will happen. All the game master just knows that this thing is locked in there with them, and it is going to do its thing.
Right.
And it will make awareness tests, and when it makes one, that's when it's going to home in and it is going to hunt them down. And so, yeah, it's all just a game of cat and mouse inside a manor house. But that's a very, very simple one shot, one evening adventure with here's the problem, here's the location, here's how it resolves. Very, very simple. It doesn't have to be hugely complicated.
Yeah, and it's fighting the basilisk itself is going to be is going to be enough drama rather for this adventure, because it's a basilisk, it has the ability to turn you to stone.
Yeah. Yes, there was a sting in the tail. In fact, there was enough members of the family that have already been turned to stone because you only get so many doses of the potion stuff to restore the people.
Mm-hmm.
So if a character gets turned to stone, for every character turned to stone, do you bring them back or do you bring a family member back?
Right.
They have to make that choice. There has to be something a bit grim in the Zweihander adventure.
Yeah, it's got to be grim and it's got
So
to be
yes, that was
perilous.
a little dilemma. Yes. Um, yeah, so that was the little sting in the tail. Once the basilisk is dead, that they then have to make the choice of who do they bring back.
Yeah, so we are coming up on our 1 hour mark, and I know we've talked about port blood quite a lot. But let's see. This seems like it's a good point to try and figure out what this conclusion is going to be to this adventure, or how we're going to write this conclusion out. Since we know that we have 3 factions, and we want to leave it open so that the GM can sort of like figure out how they want to do things. It sounds like we should probably come up with what are their 3 goals, if they are what their 3 victory conditions are. So like
Yes.
so I guess we could start with the Stevedores Union. Let's go with what's their ultimate goal. Like how. Well, I guess with the Stevedores Union,
I
there's.
can't actually.
Go ahead.
No, so I can't actually remember what the Stevie Jones Union was.
So
They
basically,
want to bring down the shipping warehouses, don't they?
yeah, they wanted to bring down the shipping warehouses, specifically because they wanted to get rid of the blood schnapps, and there's 2 methods that they had planned on doing this. One faction within the Stevedores Union wanted to do direct action and go directly to the warehouses and destroy the blood schnapps. The other faction wanted to not do that. They wanted to do go through the political channels, basically, and get the reform done that way.
Yes. So if the so you we've got a binary split there right from the start.
Mm-hmm.
If they go political, then I well that if we follow that route, that is unlikely to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, well, actually, no, because the mayor is going to be quite happy to support them against the shipping union because he doesn't want the shipping union around either.
Right.
So the net effect of that would be bringing down the shipping guild, raiding those warehouses. I imagine that there would be some kind of show of burning the blood schnapps, but probably a lot of it would disappear because the mayor can sell it himself.
Right.
So there would be a kind of hollow victory, but they will be left with trying to bring down the mayor eventually, because the shipping guild's gone, but the problem hasn't.
Right.
So if they take that fork, they end up on the road to bringing down the mayor. It's the because they've just kicked the problem further down the line. So that would lead to a more possibly a political solution of having the mayor arrested or bringing the mayor to account.
Which could potentially
that would be the conclusion. Sorry?
I was gonna say that could potentially be a whole other adventure if you've been doing like a action heavy adventure with the first one. But I could see it. Pardon me. I could see it being more like they bring down the shipping guild as part of the midpoint of the adventure if they go down the political route. and
Yes.
then realize that, oh, it's actually the mayor we need to bring down as well.
Yes. Yeah, because you'd have this kind of high point where you brought down shipping union, and then it would soon become apparent that the problem's only got worse or it hasn't got better at all.
Mm-hmm.
So there is another source, even if you hadn't realised it, there was another source of the blood snaps.
Okay.
So that the Stevedores Union political route becomes a shortcut to identifying the mayor as the bad guy, and then your conclusion would then be bringing down the mayor and dismantling his operation. Where you could have some intermediate points where he must have factories for producing the blood snap, so they can go after those. But eventually, they will have to get to, cut the head off the snake,
Right.
Bring down the mayor. So that takes them in that route. The direct action, burning the warehouses, takes them to the same place, because you may take down the shipping unions, means of supply, but all that's going to do is strengthen the mayor.
Right.
And when they realise that they've taken out they've taken down the union's way of supplying it, and the problem's still there, then there must be another supply, which would then lead them eventually to the mayor. And so that also leads to the bringing down the mayors politically to end it.
So, despite the fact that there is a divide between the two in the Stevedores Union, the victory condition is still the same.
Yes. It's how do you learn that they're both going to lead to the revelation that there is another factor other than the shipping union bringing in the blood snaps.
Right. Yeah, and I dig that. I dig that a lot. Because that was part of the original outline that I did with Tyler, was that the mayor, who you might have thought was the ally, was also involved in this trade. So that ties that back into that very first point that we wanted to have.
Yes, that's almost the best solution, because you get the whole switch between the helpful mayor to the he's now the main threat.
Mm-hmm.
Having gone through the Stevedores Union, where you have this choice. The fact that they both bring back, this is what I was saying, how you get this illusion of choice. You can do this or you can do that, but you end up at the same place. Mm-hmm. If the characters had the ability to discover the mayor as a bad guy right from the start, then that would change things, because they would be at odds with the Stevedores Union right from the start.
Right.
Which didn't seem, from what I've read, that didn't seem to be really an option. It was a case of you either work with the Stevedores Union or you work independently against the shipping guild. But the Stevedores Union was the main device, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like the bringing down the shipping guild is a midpoint, and you can have your big Hollywood explosions on the skyline,
mm-hmm.
At that point. And then what I would call resolution, which happens after the big showdown, could well be actually the second part. Either you go you take down the shipping guild resolution. There's for a period there's a shortage of blood snaps, and everyone thinks it's fine, and everyone thinks the players are heroes, and everything's good, and then the situation gets worse, and you're launching into another chapter.
Right.
So you've had a conclusion which is a fault. You had a false conclusion. Then you have to go after the mayor, and then you're still going to have some groups that will be happy with a courtroom drama, and you'll have some groups that will have the mayor meet a grisly end on his walk home one night.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, this is where the open-ended solution is, let the game master decide. But the adventure really ends with the bringing down of the mayor.
Yeah. So that's how it would end if they were to side with the Stevedores Union. How do we think it would end if they ended up siding with the mayor? Like, what's the mayor's victory conditions?
If they side with the mayor, they also take out. The goal is to take out the shipping union, possibly by manipulating the stevedores and pushing them towards the direct action.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and what that's going to do is once the mayor's cleared the field, he reveals himself as being the real bad guy. And then we're back onto the same path.
Right. Yeah, so what it sounds like is that all routes basically lead to outing the mayor, even like helping the mayor.
Eventually, yeah, we'll only reveal the situation. The only one that doesn't is if the characters are kind of seduced by Amadeus Zahn, the head of the shipping guild. And if Amadeus reveals the mayor's real nature, then that will reveal the mayor's true nature much earlier, and that would put the characters at odds with the Stevedores Union. And I'm not sure where, from the notes I've got here on the adventure, I'm not sure how that would resolve. Because yes, they can take out the mayor by fair means or foul. They could convince the Stevedores Union that the mayor is the problem. And if they can find one of the mayor's manufacturing sites, they could prove it. But the Stevedores Union know for a fact that the shipping guild are also bad. So there would have to be a moment of revelation for the characters to know that they are siding with the bad guy. And when that happens would really change the adventure. This is the route that gets really kind of, you're dealing with many unknowns. So
we did just have a posture check. So just make sure you like do adjust your like back and stuff in your posture, because we just got posture checked in chat. So like if you like you're slipping over, like sit back, lean back, there you go.
When I sit back with my reading glasses, I can't read the notes on the screen, so I'm
Gotcha.
here reading the notes. It's towards the end of my day. I can go and sit down properly and relax in a bit. So the the shipping guild, siding with the shipping guild is the uh, most complicated route through the adventure,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like it's the least likely as well because we got notes from you and when you and Sean were talking. You took that introductory scene where the players met Morgan and Isaac
Right.
and draw them into the conflict. And then Morgan and Isaac are part of the Steelers Union, so they've been drawn into the route where they start off in conflict with the shipping guild. So yeah, that's
Yeah. So
it'd be unlikely to uh, that they will side with the shipping guild, but it could happen.
yeah.
Um,
So what I'm thinking is possible with the shipping guild, like if they're siding with the shipping guild even after the thugs threatening them, that could be a they decide that they're gonna work with the shipping guild because it's lucrative.
yes, um, which is difficult for this adventure because that would lead to the bad guys winning.
Right.
If the players are perfectly happy to accept coin and not and facilitate the shipping guild getting control of the town and the blood schnapps supply, in effect, there is no conclusion to this adventure because the bad guys win,
Mm-hmm.
and the players either keep on working for them or they don't. And one day they'll decide a better job comes along, pays better, and they leave. And it's not really concluded.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that's a difficult one. Um,
It's definitely.
from the notes we've got here, oh yeah, John.
I was gonna say it's definitely like the least satisfying one, because as you said, like there is no actual conclusion to it.
No, from from what we've got here, looking at these notes from the previous litanies, that possibility has not really been developed. So something would have to happen. Um, and if I wanted to fix this, I would introduce a whole new set of events which would blow up the shipping guild. Probably a power struggle. Kill off Amadeus Zahn, put someone else in charge that's taking control of the guild, and that person no longer wants the outsiders around.
Mm-hmm.
So the shipping guild's ire is turned against the characters. Um, and they are no longer able to continue working for the shipping guild because the new head of the shipping guild does not want to employ them, doesn't want them around, they know too much, they have to die.
Okay.
And suddenly you've got a new villain which wasn't there previously, a changed situation, and yeah, then the players are kicked into action.
Right, and we I think at the top of the show we did say that that felt like that was a bad writing move. So for this particular adventure, do you feel like that's still the case, that this would be a bad move to introduce something like that,
Um,
or do you think it goes in with the theme of
yes,
power struggles?
I feel like I am trying to patch it and fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if the if this new leader of the Seagulls was scripted in right at the beginning,
Right.
You could then take that into account. So even if they went with the stevedore union or the mayor, that power struggle within the shipping guild remains part of their timeline, and it could uh, affect other plans. Um, but it would also, the game master has also got it, this tool, this lever to employ you to dislodge the players if they're getting too comfortable, or the adventure feels like it's going nowhere because the players are just accepting coin for doing work.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but it kind of feels like this adventure is set up um, to end with the political solution of bringing down the mayor,
So
and the guild. If they side with the guild, it creates a little dead end which you have to dislodge the players from.
this does bring up a
Uh,
this does bring up a cool point. Because it's perfectly okay to, like, if you find that you have a conclusion that you think you like better than the original one, it's okay to throw away the original one.
oh
Uh,
yes, definitely.
so do we like to would we want to introduce this? We'll call this technically a fifth, yeah, a fifth faction because we have the two factions in the Stevedores Union. Do we want to introduce a fifth faction, which is one that is an internal schism with the shipping guild, or do you think it would be just stronger to just leave it
Uh,
with just the mayor?
I would um, I would have the fifth faction.
We have the fifth faction.
Um, I would have the fifth faction because that then gives the game master another tool, because depending on if you've got a very investigative um, party of characters that want to find out all about the shipping guild and the workings within it, maybe under the guise of working with them,
Mm-hmm.
they could discover this faction. That part of the shipping guild is dissatisfied with um, Amadeus's leadership, um, it gives the shipping guild a bit more sort of complexity,
Right.
more texture to it, um, because they could then side with them with that faction, um, and try and bring down Amadeus on, which it, yeah, it's just it feels like the shipping guild is uh, not very well developed in the outline we have so far. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that would probably need addressing to make it a more viable route. Because at the moment it comes down to about one paragraph
Right.
or three sentences, is all we really know about them. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would want that developed a bit more.
All right. Yeah. I mean, and that makes sense. Just like I said, it's completely okay to to introduce new elements when you get to the conclusion, because essentially what we have been doing with each episode is we've been building upon this original outline that we did with Tyler way back in, I think it was December. Um,
Mm.
so really, we aren't even like quite at the first draft yet. So introducing this new
No.
element is this is the perfect place to introduce a new element and give the GM an additional wild card that they can use if necessary. Because like the players are already themselves a wild card, and this fifth faction within the Merchants Guild gives them like a way to be reactive to the players.
Yes. It feels like the route to a conclusion for the shipping guild is missing from the notes.
Hmm.
So the shipping guild, um, that yeah, the favouring the shipping guild is probably unlikely, um, because the mayor is against the shipping guild, the stevedore is are against the shipping guild, everybody's against the shipping guild. The hook to the adventure is with is two stevedores who are against the shipping guild. Everything says, the shipping guild are the bad guys.
Hmm.
The chances of the players actually siding with the shipping guild is slim, unless you've got a bunch of players which are contrary, and as soon as you say, "Oh, there's the bad guys," they go, "Oh, we're going to go with them then." And yeah, God help you if you've got players like that.
Yeah.
So it just needs a little bit something else, something that the players can, the game master can do to make the shipping guild more interesting, um, and say to make them think and rethink. So if their patron, the Amadeus is taken out and they are somehow cut loose, that would give them something to do. They may decide to take out the new leader and try and get control of the shipping union themselves. So yeah, who knows?
Well, and see, here's the other thing. Like, the patron could necessarily not be. Could There is a potential that it's not Amadeus Zahn, but the leader of this new fifth faction that we've written. That could be the patron.
Yes,
Like, maybe they pull him to like
yes,
a side meeting, and they're like, "Hey, help us take out this bad guy, and we'll help you take out the mayor, because the mayor is involved in the shipping and blood schnapps as well."
yes. Yeah, it could be that the players. We've said here that the plot hook is talking to, is I've forgotten the name of it. Of I can't remember who it is. Morgan and Isaac.
Mm-hmm.
That is the plot hook, or is it one plot hook?
Mm-hmm.
If the players, if the characters actually had the need of something else that was quite rare, um, but some witchstone or a dose of panacea, for something, for their own means.
Right.
It could be that the shipping guild are able to hold out that carrot, um, and this other faction might be able to get them what they need in return for. So that so the that would that would give the characters a reason for wanting to work with the apparent bad guy,
Mm-hmm.
because the bad guys have got something they need.
Okay. Yeah, no, I can see that working. Okay, so it does seem like we've got like a fairly solid outline for the three conclusions of this
Yeah.
adventure. So do you have anything that you want to plug? Like,
No, no.
that's right, you haven't had any releases this week, right?
Actually, this is the first week in the first week in 18 weeks that I haven't released an adventure. So no, I've got nothing brand spanking new out. Um, but yeah, there's plenty of good stuff in the library for people to go and check out. Um,
Right.
so yeah, it's No, you just check out the whole library. The whole library, it needs people to go and have a look at it
Yeah,
and see what's new. It's been quite active recently as well, which is good. Nice to see.
it's very nice to see. Yeah. And this has been the Grim Litany of Librarians. This is the series finale. We will not be returning within 2 weeks' time. So this is like the last episode. At some point in the near future, I will release this adventure that we've been working on stream for free on the library itself. Let's see. Anything else I want to add? I believe the next show on this channel is going to be on April 16th, so that's Friday, and that looks like it's going to be Hunter's show. What was the name of his show? I forgot. I believe it's the Scarlet Sash Stories. So it sounds like they've had a lot of fun. They're a good crew. And I don't know if Adam, Silver, and Blood is going to be on this Wednesday. It doesn't look like it's on the schedule, though. Yeah, and you can find me on Twitter at DMIringDB. You can find Peter on Twitter at, is it PPM Gamer?
Yeah.
Yeah, PPM Gamer. I think until next time, well, ooh, goodness gracious. Thank you all for showing up for today's series finale. And thank you, Peter, for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Y'all have a nice rest of your day. And